Hello everybody, this is Chitra C from the Information Science and Engineering Department, working as an assistant professor at Maharaja Institute of Technology, Mysore. So I am going to handle with one of the interesting subject, that is Unix programming, okay, so which is there in your third year academic year, and this is with the 5th semester, okay. And the author which you have to refer for the Unix programming subject is Sumita Badas and W. Richard Stevens. So these are the two textbooks which you have to refer. So as I have written on the board, that is Sumita Badas and Richard Stevens. Okay, so why we have to refer with these two textbooks? Because since in the Unix programming we are going to discuss, or we are going to understand with two different concepts. One is the shell programming or a shell script, and the other one is the system programming. Unix system programming and Unix shell programming. Since we are going to understand with these two concepts in the subject, so the name as what? Unix programming, okay. And the subject code as I have written on the board, as you all can see, 18 CS 56. So shell programming, okay, so as we know that programming and system programming. So before understanding with the shell, let us know about this program. So program is nothing but it comprises of instructions for the execution of any operations or the instructions what we are going to give, right. Likewise here also, it is a program, that is shell, which you are going to shell always it comprises of the commands for interpreting any of the operations which you want to execute, and each time a single line of code will get executed, a single command will get executed at a time. So this is about your shell programming. Coming on to Unix system programming. So this Unix system programming, it is like an activity of a programming computer for programming a computer system software. So if the user want to program a computer system software itself, then you need to understand about this system programming, okay. So the system programming aims to produce a software and a software platforms which provide services to other softwares, okay. So this is going to produce a software and a software platform which is basically used for providing what? Services to other software, or even the performances also, the computational performances also. So this is about your system programming. So these two concepts will be understood and will be discussed in the later on sessions with the Unix programming subject, okay. So before, so here first let us discuss with one of the interesting programming, that is shell programming. So before understanding this shell programming, we need to know about this Unix itself. So what do you mean by this Unix? So Unix operating system is one of the operating system which is widely used across the globe, okay. So why it is very important? So in today's, actually it is a full-fledged operating system which has been used with both handhelds as well as with the supercomputers. So both with the handheld and with the supercomputers, we are going to use this Unix platform, okay. So this Unix platform, as we know that it is, why it is useful, or why we are going to use this Unix operating system here is, so it remains a preferred platform for an enterprise database, for the internet service providers, as well as for the web servers, as well as for the electronic commerce. Okay, why it is very secure? So it does not have a direct access with that of what? The system directly, when compared to the Windows operating system, okay. Whereas if I consider the Windows operating system means, so we do have a direct access for operating or for accessing any kind of an operation within a system. So it might prone to what? A virus attacks with that of a Windows operating system, whereas if I consider a Unix operating system, it does not. So it is very secure with that of Windows operating system. So only we go with Unix platform always. Next is, what do you mean by the Unix operating system itself? Operating system means what? So if I want to execute any of the programs, if I want to execute any of the program within a system, So what happens? So you are going to write a program, you are going to edit the program and write it, and a few instructions will be there. So all these instructions, how it will get executed within a system. So system should have, for execution of those instructions, it should have some control, right? So all these loading the content, controlling the content and execution, all this will be done with that of an OS operating, that is operating system itself. It's like a software, okay? It's a software which is going to provide you with an access of both hardware and a software, okay? So this operating system is used for that. So you might have studied in your previous semesters also, or in the previous semester, a basic introduction about this operating system. It acts like an heart of a computer system. In a computer, always if you want to think and if you want to execute anything, this software, operating system software, is very required. Without that, computer system doesn't have a life at all, okay? So now this operating system, as I said, we are going to discuss with this operating system. In simple words, this operating system is an interface between the software and a hardware component for the execution of any of the program. So if you want to access any program which has been allocated in a memory or which has already been in the system, so for that this OS acts as what? Software interface between the software and a hardware component. In a terminology, that is, if I want to define or if you want to frame a definition, okay, for an operating system, means you can define the operating system as it is a software that manages the computer hardware and provide a convenient and safe environment. So convenient and safe environment for what? For the execution, as well as it might be for the execution of a program or accessing any content within a system. So that will be provided by this operating system software. So only we go with this operating system. So here let me consider one that is one of the tasks, like if I want to access memory management within a system, means within a computer system. So how do I access? So for that we are going to follow few of the key features of what? An operating system. So this key features what I am going to discuss, it is common to all of the operating system. It might be for the Windows operating system or it might be for Unix operating system. Management is going to handle for storing the content, loading the content, and after loading it, if you want to execute the same with few of the instructions which has been provided to that, how we are going to do that, and after that execution, how it is going to clear the memory. Okay, so these key features, how it is going to work in a scenario of memory management, will understand the features of operating system. So let features of OS. So in the scenario memory management, so in that let us consider the few of the common features of an OS. So the common features of OS is what? So first and the foremost thing is, whenever you are going to return a program, means always OS what it does is, OS is going to allocate memory for it. Okay, so a memory allocation will be done for that particular program which you have written. Okay, allocates a memory, then it is going to loads the program into allocated memory. Okay, so first the program will get allocated with the memory. Then the same program whichever you have allocated, it is going to load into the memory. Then the CPU is going, OS is going to load the CPU registers. So what is this CPU registers actually comprises of? So the CPU register basically it is going to maintain the memory allocations where each segment of the program has been stored. So this is going to maintain the program, or sorry, maintain the memory allocations which has been provided for the each and every single program or the segment of a program. So this CPU register, what it does is, with the control information which are related to the program will be handled by this CPU register. So all the instructions which has been provided to that program will be controlled by the CPU, and the registers, what it does is it is going to maintain the memory allocations which has been provided to each and every segment of a program. So, after understanding this, that is how it is going to maintain the memory allocation for each and every program which is stored in the memory allocation, the instructions which has been provided in the program are executed by the CPU. So, as I said, CPU register will have the control information which are related to that program which you have allocated into the memory, right. So, which will be maintained by the registers. Okay. So, next the instructions which are instructions provided to the program, the instructions provided to the program is being executed by the CPU. So, these instructions provided to the program will get executed by the CPU, and also it keeps tracks of what? The last execution when it was executed, the time which at what time it has got executed, that last execution time will also be maintained by the CPU, so that further in the future if the user want to execute the same program with some modification means, so that can be done by using this CPU. So, this OS along with this execution of the program will be done by using this CPU, right. So, the instructions provided to the program will also get executed by the CPU, and also OS what it does is whatever the instructions provided by the program for the execution, after the execution even it is going to keep track of the last executed time also. So, this will be get benefited for the further or the later for the execution with any modification. So, at the end what it does is, so it is going to, after allocating a memory for the program, then loading the program into the allocated memory, then loading the CPU register with the control information of that program. So, registers what it does is it is going to maintain the each and every program segment which has been allocated for that program, and also after the allocation and also loading the information to the CPU registers, the instructions provided to the program will get executed, right. So, by the CPU. So, all these will, after doing this execution, after the execution, so it has to clear the content, right, in that memory location. So, after the execution the OS clears the what? The memory location, clears the memory location for further program or for the next program. So, these are the key features, common key features of an operating system and how it is going to work. So, each time allocates a memory for any program you have written, load the same program, then loads the CPU registers, then instructions provided to that program will get executed by the CPU, and finally after the execution it is going to clear the memory location for further programs or for the next program. So, these features what I have discussed now, it is a common feature to all of the operating system, might be for the Unix operating system or might be for the Windows operating system. Okay. So, I hope you people have understood with this key features of an operating system. Okay. So, the next concept in this is, so far we have discussed with what is a Unix programming is, shell programming means what, system programming means what, and also we discussed with why we require the Unix operating system platform, why we go with that, and also we have discussed with a basic introduction of what is an operating system and a common features of an operating system. Okay. So, this is about your operating system. So, now let us discuss with basic common differences between a Windows operating system and a Unix operating system. So, you might come across in your mind now why we go with that is what is the difference between this Unix and a Windows operating system, right. So, let me discuss with that also. So, few basic basic differences between the Unix and a Windows operating system. So, I am going to discuss that with what by providing a key features of this Unix and a Windows operating system. So, let me consider this two partition in which one is with a Unix operating system and another one is with a Windows operating system. So, what is this Unix and Windows operating system differences are? So, as I said, so this Unix operating system, by using a shell, right, by using that shell you are going to execute a program. So, how it is going to execute the program? By interpreting each and every command, whatever the command you have given for that particular program. Whereas Windows, so only here we always define or call this as what? Unix is a command. So, Unix is command line user interface, not command based, it is a command line user interface. Okay. Whereas Windows, it is a menu based user interface. Menu based user interface means what? So, here we are going to use a graphical user interface, that is GUI. Okay, graphical user interface. Yes, of course, even in Unix, in operating system also nowadays we are going to use the graphical user interface for this also in the latest version of operating system. Whereas here this is completely a menu based user interface. Just by one click you can access any of the folder or the file which is allocated or stored in the hard disk. Whereas here whichever the program you have to access or you have to execute, always it should be through the command itself. Okay, using that shell command itself you are going to access it. So, only here it is command line user interface and it is a menu based user interface. Okay. So, next is in this Unix is a powerful multi-user and a multitasking operating system. Yes, of course. So, the same feature even it applies for what? The Windows operating system also. So, Unix is what? Unix is multi-user and multitasking operating system. Here also it supports the same multi-user, multitasking operating system, multi-user and multitasking. So, what do you mean by this multi-user and a multitasking? So, multi-user here refers to what? Multiple user can access the same program or the same resources. So, that is nothing but a multi-user. Whereas, multitasking here refers with what? Multitasking refers to the same program can be concurrently executed by that is more than a task can be executed in a single OS. So, that is what this multitasking refers to. So, multi-user, even in Windows operating system also it supports what? Multi-user and multitasking operating system. So, whereas this Unix is a powerful multi-user and a multitasking OS which was originally developed by AT&T Bell Laboratories, whereas this Windows is most demanding GUI based OS, but it replaces that with what? A command line interface. So, even though this is very powerful, but this Windows operating system was replaced with the command line user interface with that of what? GUI, that is very user friendly. So, that is one major difference between this multi-user and multitasking. Here each and every operations or the accessing, how we are going to access through the shell itself. Whereas here just by a click you can access the access any of the operation or the program which has been stored in the memory. And this is open source. Unix operating system is open source, but this is not. It is not open source. It is a licensed version. So, always you have to buy, you have to provide a license key, then only you can buy that, then you can access the operating system, whereas this is open source and on any platform you can execute this, on any of the hardware machine you can install this operating system. Next is stability. If I consider the stability feature means, so this is more stable when compared to what? The Unix operating system. So, this is not less stable. So, when compared to this stability, so this is more stable when compared to a Windows operating system, whereas since as multiple programs are running, so it is very unstable or it is very less stable. Why it is less stable here is, as I said, just by a click you are going to access n number of programs at the same time. So since we can execute a multiple program, so it takes that is, it is going to have a less stable, that is, it is very less stable, whereas this is more stable. Next is case sensitive. Case sensitivity. Yes, of course, in the Unix operating system it is case sensitive, whereas here it is not case sensitive. So case sensitive means what? So might be here while execution of a command, so whichever the command, if I have, let me consider one simple command. If I consider an ls command, you can't execute with the capital letters ls, that is like L and S. So this ls command is basically used for listing the files. Okay. So this is used for the execution of what? If the user want to list out few of the files, means, so each and every files within a system, so that files can be listed out by using this ls command. So you can't interpret the ls command like this with the capital L or capital S, or just with the one letter capital and one letter small. So only it is here, it is case sensitive. It is not that case sensitive. Few of the commands might get executed even with what? The capital letters also. So next is what? File extension. Few more differences are of this Unix operating system is file extension. So what is this file extension here refers to? So in Windows operating system, file extension actually it requires for identifying the files. Okay, this file extension in the Windows operating system, it is required for identifying the type of file, whereas here it is not required. It does not affect the type of file at all. It does not affect the type of file, that is the extension what you have provided, it does not affect that much when compared to a Windows operating system. Next is, the next difference here is device drive. Device drive. So what is this device drive? So several ways are used to manage the device drivers here. Okay, so several ways are used for managing the device drivers, whereas here after the installation of a Windows, various device drivers package provide interactive GUI for the configuration. So here there are ways of managing the drivers, drivers means device drivers, okay, whereas here after installation the device drivers will have a GUI configuration. So this is one more difference between the Unix and Windows operating system. Then recovery. In Unix operating system can't recover the file, whereas in Windows operating system you can recover the file, since each and every time whenever you are going to delete or remove the file, that will get into a recycle bin folder, whereas here we do not have that option, that is for the execution, for recovering the data, whichever the data you have removed. Okay. Even though we have a trash within this, few files might not get recovered at all. So only here it is not, recovery is not provided, the data which you have removed from the OS or within the system, it will not get recovered when compared to a Windows operating system. Next is processing. Next is processing power. Processing power. So, with the Unix operating system, we do have a greater processing power when compared to a Windows operating system. So, here we do have less processing system. Why? Because as I said, GUI, since we do have a user friendly environment, that is a GUI has been incorporated within the Windows OS. When compared to this we do have in a Unix operating system, we do have a greater processing. In Windows operating system, we do have a less processing power. Next is security. So, in the initially itself, as I have already mentioned, the Unix operating system is more secure when compared to a Windows operating system. Why? Because as I said, we do have a direct access in Windows operating system with that of a hardware, right, or hardware services, whereas here through the for execution of any program by using a shell, that is the command interpreter. So, through this itself, that is you are going to access the kernel here, that is the hardware component. So, without this you can't access. So, here this is more secure, whereas here we do have a direct access to the system. It is less secure, that is attacks are more, virus attacks are more in Windows operating system, whereas here less virus attacks. Or even you can say we do not have a virus attack because we do not have a direct access to the system. Here through the shell itself you have to interpret or you have to interact with the system, whereas here we do have direct access. So, it is more prone to virus attacks, it is less prone to virus attacks. The next is the last feature, or not but the least, the last one is we do have some other differences also, but here I am mentioning only few of the differences. Okay. Yes, might be we do have other differences of this Windows and Unix operating system, but here I am just mentioning with few of the differences between the Unix and Windows operating system. Okay. So, in the file system organization, if I consider the Unix operating system with that of a Windows operating system, here I do have only one of the directory called the root directory. Under this itself, all the file or the hierarchies file system has been organized in an hierarchical manner. For example, in an hierarchical manner means always I do have only one directory, that is root directory. Under this I might have the user directory, bin directory, or any programming tool directory like this, or any software directory. So, under this you are going to place all your files, whereas here and here the organization of the file system is very efficient as well as it is very effective. Whereas if I consider in the Windows operating system, yes, of course you do have a different drivers, right, like C drive, like we do have D drive. So, under all these drivers you can place a different folders. Under this folder you can place files, but here as I have specified, only you will have a root directory. Under that we do have a subdirectories, under this we do have a files. So, this is how the organization of the file system in the Unix operating system is, whereas here and here it does not include any C drive, D drive like that. Instead, under one directory or under one system directory, all the files will get hierarchically placed. Whereas in this Windows operating system we do have different drivers. So, under that you can place all your files as well as any of the folder can be created. Here also you can create a folder, but under the root directory, whereas here within different drivers you can create a folder, then the files within that folder. Okay. So, these are the few differences between the Windows and a Unix operating system. So, this is about your differences between the Unix and a Windows operating system. So, let me next go with the concept, that is basic features of what? Unix operating system. Features of Unix operating system. So, before actually I discussed with what? A common features of a Unix operating system. So, now I am discussing with the features of Unix operating system itself. Okay. And yes, you might be understood even more better, because I have already given a differences between what? Unix operating system as well as a Windows operating system. So, you can just compare while explaining this actual features of what? Unix operating system. So, here the Unix operating system, in this we do have few of the features, like one is a portable, other one is multi-user. All these already I have discussed few features in this. Other one is multitasking, then networking. Okay. Next, file organization. Next, pattern matching. Building blocks approach. We do have next Unix programming tools. Documentation. So, these are the few features of what? A Unix operating system. So, file organization system, this is one, and we do have one more, that is device independence. Okay. I will explain it. So, this is first let me go with one by one what actually all these features is all about. So, portability here refers to portable. As I said, Unix can be installed on many hardware platforms. On any of the hardware platforms, you can install this Unix operating system, so only it is portable. On any of the, there is no restriction, since it is open source, you can what? Install the operating system, Unix operating system on any of the hardware. Next is what? Multi-user. So, as I said, Unix design allows multiple users to concurrently share between the hardware and the software. So, you can share the resource between the multiple user. Okay. The same resource can be shared between two of the users or two end user, or even more than that also. The information can be shared, or that resource can be shared. So, only here it is what? Multi-user, and also multiple user can access the same resources. Next is what? Multitasking. So, what is this multitasking refers to? Multitasking here refers to a user is allowed to run more than one program at a time, or concurrently you can execute what? More than one program in a system, a single user. So, that is what this multitasking refers to. So, one simple example if I want to provide you is, so if I consider a Word file, so that Word file you might, once you have opened any Microsoft Word file, means you can open the file, you can edit a file, at the same time after editing you can provide what? Give the same file for printing, as well as the same file can be mailed to the other person also, right. The same file is being shared in a multiple ways, it has been accessing, right. So, that is what this multitasking refers to. Next is what? Networking. So, networking in the, if I go with this networking concept means, so in our mind whenever I am going to talk with this network means, always it comes into mind that network is usually that is provided for the communication purpose between the two end user. So, how do I communicate between the two end user? Yes, of course, we do have a protocol for accessing that. So, in the Unix operating system, even we are going to use a standard communication protocol, that is TCP/IP protocol, transmission control protocol and internet protocol. By using that you can what? Even share the program, or even you can remotely access the program by using this networking. So even that has been supported in the Unix operating system. Next is file organization system. So as in the differences while explaining, as I said, always this is one of the most effective way of organizing the file system in the Unix operating system. Here always a single directory, under the single directory all your files will get stored hierarchically. So that is what this file organization system refers to. Okay, we do not have a different drivers when compared to what the other Windows operating, that is the other operating system, that is Windows. As in Windows we do have C drive and D drive like that, whereas here we do have a single directory or a single file system, that is a root. Under that you are going to place all your folders and files. Next is what? Pattern matching. So what is this pattern matching refers to? So pattern matching in the system, that is in the Unix system, here it refers to what? It is a very sophisticated pattern matching feature which has been provided in the Unix, which is going to elaborate. So if the user want to match with the multiple files, let me consider one scenario where actually this pattern matching is very useful. So if in the Unix system, if I want to access a single that is a file which is going to start with the name like chapter, okay. So let me consider I do have a under the directory under the user directory, okay. So under this user directory I do have chapter 1, chapter 2, then chapter 3 files, okay. So if I want to list out all these 3 files at the same time, so how do I going to list out? So you can list out this all these 3 files at the same time by using one of the simple command in the Unix, that is ls command, followed by the file name. Since it starts with all the 3 file names starts with the chapter, that is chap 1, chap 2, chap 3 like this. Since only the last character, that is 1, 2, 3 is differing, right. So to match all these characters, it might be a numeric character or it might be any other character, that is alphabetical character also. So if I want to match this kind of a character, since we do have a common is what? Common is chap is common in all these 3 files. Only the difference is what? In the last character is varying. So for matching that, you are going to use what? A star meta character. So this is provided only in the shell programming. So in the shell programming or in the shell script, that is Unix shell programming, or in the Unix operating system, we do have this feature Unix, that is pattern matching, in which it defines a set of meta characters. So by using those set of meta characters, you are able to access this kind of files. So we do have different meta character for accessing the files in different ways, even for removing a file, for renaming a file, and for moving one file to another directory or from one folder to another folder like this. We do have different commands. So all these for accessing these kind of an operation in different ways, this pattern matching is very useful. So for understanding this, first you need to understand what? This meta characters. So meta characters here refers to what? Like this star, question mark. So all these are what? Meta characters. We will discuss later once we get into this chapter, okay. So next is what? Building block approach. Next, they have built and developed a few hundred commands, okay. Few of the 100 commands, each of which performed a single job. That is, for example, this building block approach here refers to what? If I consider a Windows operating system, yes, of course, in that if I consider the Windows operating system, we might have too many tools for accessing a different kinds of an operation. Here in the Unix operating system, we do have a few of the tools, that is a few of the commands have been defined, and each and every command sets whatever the commands it has been defined within the Unix operating system, a single command will get executed each and every time, okay, and all these commands have been packed or defined under the shell, okay. So that is what this building block approach refers to. Next is Unix programming tools or Unix toolkit, okay. So in this Unix toolkit actually defines with a general purpose tools like text manipulation tools, and also it defines with network application tools, system administration tools, and also it defines with compilers and interpreter tools. Okay. So, all these tools have been provided in the Unix programming tools. Next is documentation. So, what do you mean by this documentation here? So, documentation here refers to what? So, we do have a user manual defined within the Unix operating system. Since this Unix operating system is all about using a command itself, you are going to access any of the operation of within a system, or accessing any content, you are going to use commands here. So, that command, if you want to know what actually that command does, what it is, and how to use that command. So, all these documentation has been defined in one of the user manual, that is documentation, by using a command called man command. Okay. So, this is about what? The features of a Unix operating system: portable, multi-user, multitasking, networking, file organization system, pattern matching, building blocks approach, Unix programming tools, documentation. So, along with this, we do have one more feature, that is Unix programming language. Programming language. Language here refers to what? As we discussed with the C language and C++ language, like that. So, even we do have a programming, you can define that is, you can write a script, a shell script, which is referred as a programming language. Okay. So, that shell script can be written even in this also by using different control structures, as we have defined with the C program, as well as looping structures, variables defined as in C. Even here also you can define a variable. So, all these are what? Even used with that is for defining a script itself, shell script itself, that content has been defined within this Unix programming language. So, this is about your today's session, that we have discussed with what? The introduction part of Unix, why Unix is required, and lastly operating system. What do you mean by an operating system? Differences between the Windows and Unix operating system. Not but the least, the last is what? Features of Windows Unix operating system. So, these are the contents what we have discussed in today's session. Thank you. So, we will discuss the next topics in the next session.